Welcome. Today, our movie examination, because I don't consider it a review really. I consider it more examining the robots or AI or androids, cybernetics that they put in the movie. And I just like to look at them from, my perspective of how I see things. And with the technologies that we have now, what I can kind of glean from and what the maybe how they would see it back then, or see it when they filmed it at the time. So today is the film that or the movie that actually was part of the creation of this channel, and it's a movie that I have been wanting to do for a long time. All kinds of other stuff got in the way. Bicentennial Man. That's right. And the reason I plan on doing Bicentennial Man is because I kept hearing people talk about what a great movie it is from a robotic standpoint. And I'm like, well, one, it's Android. And two, no. No, 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 no. And I'll get into the no, no, no's about why this is not a good movie for something that we should look for in androids in the future, and it's something that we should be wary of for androids in the future. So I'll get into that, but first, hey, feel free to like and subscribe, and let's take a look at that trailer.
Everybody downstairs, come on, you guys, I got a surprise for you.
What is it, Daddy?
Wait.
Wow. Oh man, brings me back to a couple weeks ago when I rewatched it. So let me tell you first where you can actually go ahead and watch this. So you can go ahead and watch this stream-wise on Tubi. So it is on Tubi to stream. You can rent it on for $3.99 on Apple TV, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, Vudu, Microsoft. Microsoft's got a movie channel. Of course they do, because Apple TV has one, which, like I said, you can rent this on. Redbox, DirecTV, and AMC Theater on demand. I just laughed when I saw AMC Theater on demand. I'm just like, well, of course, they have to stay in the game. Can't just have the theater releases anymore. Anyway, so the other place, if you want to buy it, which I don't recommend buying this, not because of the movie, but because of the price. Every single one of these that I mentioned, except for AMC On Demand, is $17.99. For Bicentennial Man that came out in 1999, this movie should not be $17.99 to buy. Not even close. Not even close. So don't buy it, in my recommendation. I mean, if you're hardcore, into androids, robots, and everything, obviously you're gonna buy it, because I know I bought mine on Amazon. But I didn't buy it for $17.99. I bought it, way before they bumped up that price. But on AMC theaters, it is for $9.99. So that's a more reasonable price. So let's get into the cast and crew. So this cast and crew, obviously, that Robin Williams plays Andrew, the android of the movie. But we also have Sam Neill from, famed Jurassic Park territory, and he plays Sir. That is his character's name. It's called Sir. Of course it is. And then you have Oliver Platt, who plays the roboticist or android, and the cyberneticist who helps Andrew become more. And then you have Mbeth Davids, who plays Little Miss, and eventually is also the love interest of Andrew, and a host of other characters. One of them is Kirsten Warren, who plays Galatea. Is another very important in my examination character, and another important examination character for examination, or in this examination, is Stephen Root, who plays Dennis Mansky. If you don't remember Stephen, he was the main guy in News Radio. He was the CEO, the head tycoon who had the helicopter. So that was where I remember him from. But anyway, so let's get into the crew. That's something else I want to touch base on for a lot of these, is the importance of this film's crew. Without this film's crew, I think it would have been a very different movie, probably not in a good way. And they focused on the practical effects, which is what makes this movie, made in 1999 directed by Christopher Columbus, still good today. It's a good movie to watch because it has the practical effects. It has good storyline for the most part. It's got good acting. It's, like I said, it's still watchable. I'll probably watch again later during the week because it's still that good. It doesn't have too many there are some visual effects in it, obviously. When Andrew opens up the top of his head, which is a practical effect, but the visual is the circular form where it comes to the laws of robotics, which is from Isaac Asimov. That's the other thing that I want to mention. Actually, it's kind of important, in my opinion. Isaac Asimov created a short story called Bicentennial Man. Loose relation on this from the little bits that I read, but the novel by Robert Silverberg called The Positronic Man is where I think this movie gets a lot of its meat. That Chris Columbus and the screenwriter Nicholas Kazan really delve into. Let's get into the examination. Let's really dive into it. I'm not going to dive into Andrew first. Maybe kind of touch on it on the side, but I really want to dive into Stephen Root's character, Dennis Mansky, who is, I think he's supposed to play the CEO of the company, but for me, he comes off more as a CTO. You know, he's examining. He doesn't really come off as a CEO, in my opinion. But anyway, so I'm gonna call him a CTO. When they bring Andrew in and they're talking about his uniqueness, Dennis Mansky, or Mr. Mansky goes and is like, well, how much do you want from him? Because, this could ruin us, because this basically is a malfunction. He realizes this is a malfunctioning Android. It should not be doing what it's doing. It should not be making art. It should not be listening to music with its eyes closed and feeling the music. All these things are not something that it was programmed to do, yet Andrew is doing them, thus making him unique, thus making him the first in the singularity. So this android that Mansky is looking at and examining is malfunctioned. The company has created its first singularity android, which is great because then it can, replicate that. But it's also detrimental if it doesn't get a good hold on it. Andrew should have been scanned. They went in that meeting with Mansky, Sir and Andrew were like, or at least Sir was like, we don't want Andrew's uniqueness to be removed because, you're going to wipe him and then you're just going to give us a new model. this this android, if this is the first in many, this could cause what I call the Battlestar Galactica scenario, where a particular code goes out and causes a quote unquote recall of the Cylons in the Battlestar Galactica case, or of bots like Andrew, or you could have it like the Anti-Matrix, where that one robot didn't want to get shut down, so it murdered its owners. So in all these instances, you have a singularity instance gone awry. In Andrew's case, it's cute, but it gets dark when you start to really examine what's happening as the movie progresses. So, in my opinion, the company should have agreed with Sir and Andrew that to examine, not to erase and not to reformat Andrew, but just to examine, because what they would have done is they would have gotten the data of his code and then been able to figure out what's going on to make sure it doesn't happen again. That makes Andrew unique. Great. It gives him that singularity aspect. Fine. Let's slowly roll something out like that where it's more controlled, because as we watch the movie, and if you've watched the movie before coming to this review, you'll see Andrew's actually not in control. He's all over the place. And it's cute because it's Robin Williams. But again, this is in that movie, this is an android that can rip people's arms off. Obviously, according to the laws of robotics, shouldn't be able to do that. But if we look later on, Andrew does have a violent tendency. And that's what we'll get into with Galatea. Andrew attacks Galatea twice. I'm not going to get into the love aspect. We already know that this movie focuses on the human aspect, not the technological aspect of the robot. Of the android. I'm trying to remember to call it android because it is an android, definitely past the robotic stage. So Andrew is very emotional, but he's emotional before, like right when he comes out. And I think there's a couple. The one instance that I remember where Andrew gives the audience the hey, I'm gonna change, is after the falling out the window scene, or jumping out the window scene. Sir calls everybody to the mat, basically calls everybody downstairs. Everybody stands at the bottom of the stairs, and for no reason at all except to make it look cute for the movie, Andrew stands next to the girls. This makes no sense. Andrew, one, should be downstairs repairing himself and calling service to get the parts needed, because Andrew is very badly damaged. But anyway, he stands there, and again, it looks cute. He's got dirt all over his feet, and the girls are there, so he focuses on all of their feet and everything. But anyway, so Sir says this line: he's to be treated like one of the family. Andrew gives this look of, now because he's already got this self-awareness going. Now he sees his positronic mind. We're going to use positronic from the Positronic Man that the novel come from. He already sees that it's already known that he's got this singularity aspect of him. But now he's like, oh, I'm part of the family. I'm human. And thus he becomes to act more human, thus acting more like part of the family. But he really isn't, because later on we see that he asks for his freedom. Sir scoffs at this because Andrew really has had a bunch of freedom to do what he wants in the artistic aspects. But what Andrew really wants is he wants the freedom to say no. He wants the freedom to disobey his programming. This is problematic. This says this android may, if it so wants to, which it does later on, want to eventually harm someone. And it can if it gets the quote-unquote freedom aspect. We're not talking about a sentient being here. And this is going to go back to Star Trek's Data, where they examine Data and try to find, is he sentient or not. This is, in this universe of this movie, this is an android that is malfunctioning. Just take that into consideration for what I'm about to say next. Andrew attacks Galatea twice. Not once, but twice. Galatea, later on in the film, disobeys the prime mandate of the robotics laws by killing Little Miss. Yes, Little Miss she was old, she wanted it, but that goes against the laws. Her positronic her brain should have shut down after doing that action, or it shouldn't have even got to that. It should have been, I cannot perform this action, and a human nurse comes in, maybe someone that we've seen kind of in the background or something, and she does the act, and Galatea is, standing there with her programmed sadness on her face. That would have made more sense, because this movie shows the laws of robotics are more suggestions than actual laws. And for androids, AI, robots, things don't work that way. Even if you got Andrew who gets the quote-unquote freedom, he still has that laws of robotics in him. Yes, he has the ability to say no. He has the ability to go against his programs to a point. But those laws, he should not be able to harm. Yet he does. Like I said, he goes against Galatea. He attacks Galatea with like a impact hammer or impact drill or something, because she's so chipper and he just can't take it. So we have Andrew being frustrated, annoyed enough to commit a violent act. So it's not against a human, but it is against a fellow android, another AI. That shouldn't be possible either. The second time he does it is he removes her motivation chip, or whatever that chip is. I can't remember what they call it in the movie. That makes her chipper. And she becomes really angsty and rude, and she doesn't want to work anymore. And that doesn't make sense, because her base, if he takes, after taking that chip out, which, if it's a motivation chip, like I'm remembering, like I said, I can't remember the name of it, but we're just going to call it a motivation chip. That motivation chip has everything. It has her angsting and her chipperness. So taking that out, she should just revert to basic, boring android that has no emotions whatsoever. Basically, she should be Data from Star Trek. But no, she becomes angsty and all this other stuff. And she throws tools around. And then Rupert's character, or Rupert, the character Rupert, has to go in and, bargain for her chip back from Andrew. No. First of all, Rupert's dad was like one of the engineers that created these robots. So the first thing Rupert should have done is made sure to put something in that even though, he was assuming that Andrew wouldn't be able to go against the laws of robotics, but after seeing that whole impact issue that he goes against Galileo, the next examination, he should have put something in Andrew of, like, to the point of not being able to commit any acts that would go against humans or Rupert or something, because, like I said, Rupert has to bargain for this chip again. And that makes no sense either, because this is an android that has to obey humans. Rupert may not be the quote-unquote owner, but technically speaking, all owners or all humanoids are the owners of these robots. So while Sir has given him the okay to be free, he still has to obey the humans in the form of those 3 laws, thus still having to obey humans, period. If human says, hey, pick up that piece of trash, Andrew should not be able to say no. It should be, one is always there to serve, and pick up the trash and put it in the trash can. Because, again, as mean as it may sound, and it shouldn't be mean at all, it is, again, an android to be obeyed. And this is something that Humans, the BBC show Humans, got right. So they noticed the characters that had the maid, and I can't remember the name of the maid, say Mai or something, don't quote me on that. When they had her, there's another code on top of her that they didn't know that was on top of the main code of her personality, and that code underneath was surfacing once in a while, where she would like scream, or she would say odd things and act in a very strange way. So what they did was they brought that robot back, or that android back, to the factory and said, look at the code, something's wrong. Now this Humans was created more in modern times in the 21st century, so we have a better understanding of code and how code affects the bodies of the robot and so on, or the bodies of the android and so on and so forth, that they didn't have, or they didn't really pay attention to in 1999, where back then it was like, ooh, this is look, it's got arms and legs, it's like C-3PO and it moves. It's like they didn't have the aspects of AI being the thing that actually controls all the mechanisms that you're seeing that move. So we have that today, which is one of the reasons, in my opinion, that Humans gets it right when they're like, look at this code, find out what's going on, because this is crazy. And that's when they found there's this undercode, and she was older than they had been told, so there's a possible issue. And so they got into a big discussion of, is she dangerous? They don't do that in Bicentennial Man. There's never any, oh, is he dangerous? I mean, ma'am, she's just uncomfortable with him because he's able to, function like a human, basically, and do everything that she wanted to do. But that's just jealousy. But they don't go, is he dangerous? Does he present a danger? Rupert should have seen that, should have come to that conclusion rather at the first attack of Galatea. I'm not going to talk about the... one of the things, rather, I'm not going to talk about is the human aspect of Andrew. I know that's like the biggest part of this film, where he gets to be human and he's free and independent, and that's the end of the film, and he quote unquote dies. And then Little Miss dies right next to him by Galatea finally pulling the plug on her. But the funny thing about that is Andrew can be revived. He can be revived, no problem. Especially with the technology that will come about later in that world's technology. Yeah, no problem. Andrew, he'll be frustrated, he'll be annoyed, he'll be pissed. But yeah, Andrew can be revived just to prove, hey, you know what? You are an android. Yeah, we can slow your system down, but we can bring it right back because your positronic brain is right there, and we can just remap it, pop you right back into a new body, Picard style. Anyway, so it just gets a little frustrating. More and more I looked into it, and obviously it's a movie, I know, and there's a lot of stuff from 1999 you have to take it as a grain of salt because they didn't have an understanding of robotics, AI, and androids that we do today, and cybernetics. And today being 2022. But it's still a little annoying. Just because I still have to remember, oh, this is 1999. They're just focusing on mechanisms and gears, and that's what made an android, you know. So again, I will say it is a fun movie. You know, taking all that out and just looking at it as this movie to just have fun with, it does meet that, hands down, no worries. So that being said, feel free to like and subscribe. Till next time, thanks for watching. Bye now.